Hey everybody, what is up? Fourth Seraph here, and today I have a very exciting video for you. I'm going to be talking about the best places to land, loot up, and get set to get some wins in Call of Duty Blackout. Now, before we get into the actual list, I want to just say what my criteria were. Obviously, the loot that you come out with is very important. I also put survivability into the equation. There are spots where you might find very good loot, but it's going to be almost impossible for you to come out as a solo alive, or maybe if you're playing squads with your whole squad there. And as we know, if you come out with your whole squad alive out of the beginning of the game, it's going to give you a big leg up on almost everyone else playing, because for the most part, a full squad won't make it till the end game. Now, I play mostly squads, and that seems to be what people really prefer in this game. I do love playing duos as well. For me, solos does get a little bit boring, but I still like solos in this game. It's not like when I played PUBG where I could not even stand playing solos. It was just like painful for me to do that. So it's not like that, but I just prefer playing with friends. I think that's the best way to play the game. So just keep in mind that all of these are kind of, I'm taking every game mode into account. So you'll hear me talk a lot about squads and things like that, but everything should translate pretty well to solos as well. But let's get right into the list. At number 5 for me is going to be Fracking Tower. Now, the thing I like about Fracking Tower is it has a very high spawn rate for a box. And I think the way the spawn rates work is they're actually guaranteed, but when I say very high spawn rate, I mean like within a place you're going to look, you're probably going to find the box. Someone is going to find the box in Fracking Tower almost every time. There are some places where I think it's a guaranteed spawn. Again, I'm not 100% sure if we have data actually on the spawn rates yet of the boxes, but they can spawn in really odd places and they can be very easily missed. For the most part, if you go underneath in Fracking Tower, you are going to find this box. And there's usually pretty good loot down there just in general. The thing I like too is it's a pretty safe location. Have 1 or 2 people land at the entrance to the bunker, not the metal doors you open up, but the other entrance. Go under there and then have 2 of your teammates land up top at maybe one of the 3-story buildings if you're playing in a squad. But it's got a good loot path. You can loot it pretty easily. As long as you stay away from some of the really open areas, you're going to be fairly safe there. And it's a pretty easy place to fight if you are a very organized squad and you've played with your friends before. And it's a pretty easy place to come out of alive. Other than the box, I wouldn't say that this is a place that's like tier A loot, but it is pretty good. And you're going to come out, everyone should have, at least 1 assault rifle, things like that, where you will have enough loot to be able to make it into the end game and be successful. And hopefully someone should have at least 1 set of level 3 armor. Someone should have a sniper. So you should have pretty good loot. And then there's also lots of houses around Fracking Tower, really in every direction. So the nice thing is once you move on from there, you can loot wherever you're going to go. And there are quite a few vehicle spawns around as well. So that'll really help you get to your next destination. Now, coming in at number 4 for me is going to be Estates, specifically Raid. I don't really like going to the other house, and here's why. You will die. It's a very kind of open and weird place to loot, and people seem to want to go there because the loot is more condensed on the, I forget what the map is called, but it's a remake of the Black Ops 3 map, and the loot is more condensed. But there are less loot spawns, and as far as I've been able to tell about the way loot spawns in this game is it doesn't seem like there's really different tiers of spawns like there were in PUBG. It just seems like the place you can go with the more spawns, the more likely you are to find good loot. So volume of spawns over, I guess, quality of spawns is what I tend to prefer in this game, because spawns seem to just kind of all be completely random. I think Raid is great because it's got a really good place to land as a solo, duo, or squad. It's easy. If you land in the right spots, you can really get great positioning. I'm not going to go super in-depth on this because I am working on a series right now of how to land at all of the different places and things like that so that you can come out alive and have the best loot. So I'll cover it more in depth. I always land at this small building off to the side. There's almost always a gun there. There's 3 spawns right outside of it. There's 4 or 5 spawns in the actual building. and it's really easy to dip out if you need to, or just run around the outside walls, and you can kind of push any direction that you want and really wipe estates from one side to the other. But overall, I think this has great loot. The only thing right now is it seems to be a pretty hot drop because of the character challenge associated with it. But I think if you play it smart, you should still be able to all come out alive. But this is probably going to be one of the hottest drops that I have on this list. Next is going to be Asylum. Asylum, again, is kind of a hot drop right now, but it already, I think, at the time of making this video, seems to be calming down a little bit because the characters, the zombie characters there, are quite a lot easier to get than getting Reznov was. So I think that this will calm down probably even more over the next week or so. And I think Asylum has amazing loot. There's so many loot spawns. It's such a great place to go. You can get a zombies box. I always land on this balcony up here, and I think that's the best way. You can push in to go get the note, the Emperor's note, or whatever it is for Takeo. You can hear people running up the stairs to your left, because if you even run by that chain link fence, it makes a noise. So it's a really good place because it's easy to know when people are trying to come at you. And there's always gun spawns on that balcony there. But this is a place also you can loot the graveyard. You can loot the labyrinth within Asylum. You can loot the building off to the side. That building off to the side, the 2-story one, almost always has a sniper rifle in it. I don't know why, but it almost always does. So make sure you check there. But there's a ton of loot around. And the nice thing is, like Graveyard, you can loot there afterwards, and it's really easy to push the people who are at Graveyard, let them do some looting, push around the back of Graveyard, shoot them, kill them, get their loot, start the game with quite a few kills, and be off to a great start. There's always lots of armor, there's lots of guns, there's lots of healing. Overall, I think this is one of the best loot spots, and it just is such a fun spot. For me to land, it's actually probably my favorite, even though it might not actually be the best. I'm putting it at number 3 on this list, and I think you will be able to get some great wins coming from Asylum. At number 2 on this list, I am going to put Hydro Dam. Now, I'm putting it at number 2 because it does have a lot of loot, but it also has great escape, because there's always a boat there, almost always a truck there, and it's usually not too packed. This was a very busy place early on in the game, but people have really started to leave Hydro Dam. They don't really come here too often anymore, so you should be mostly on your own to loot at the beginning. You're probably going to come out with a full team unless you push people like in a bad way. The only thing you do have to be careful is there are those buildings right to the north of Hydro, and those have really good loot in them. Not a bad place to land, but they are kind of a hot drop. For the size of those buildings, people do really like to go there. So you can very likely have 2 or 3 teams landing there, depending on if you're solo, duo, or squads. But there's usually quite a few people that land at those buildings. And you do have to be careful if you are on the, I guess, what is that, the west side of Hydro Dam, that people may be dropping down on you from those buildings, so just be aware of that. But for the most part, people don't really land there, so it's a great place to loot super quickly, get some great loot. You'll probably get at least 1 sniper coming from Hydro, and then you can head off to the circle and try and get yourself a win. There's nothing really too complicated about here. Just land probably on the roof of one of the buildings, loot up there, go down through one of the sides, and pretty much even just looting one side, you should have the basic loot that your team would need to move on into the mid game. Might not have everything, but if you really have time, or you get circle and you can loot the whole Hydro Dam, you will come out with a lot of stuff. Alright, and on to the final place. This is the place that I have gotten the most wins by landing, and it was somewhere that I didn't really like landing at first, but the more I played it, the more I can appreciate and understand how amazing this spot is, and that is going to be Turbine. Now, if you'll notice, the bunkers are, or I don't know, hangars, I guess is probably a better word. The hangars are labeled 1, 2, and 3. I always land at 2. I'll mark it here on the map for you. Hopefully remember to put that screenshot in. But this is a great place to land for a few reasons. One, for some reason, sensor darts love to spawn here. Again, I don't really have accurate data on how the spawn rates work, but we always have at least 1 sensor. which makes it really easy because there's usually another team or two here. But when you put out a sensor, you can see them and wipe them pretty easily. So I find this a good place to get some kind of easy kills early on. There's also plenty of cover, plenty of different angles and stuff to shoot people through. You can get creative here, but also just the loot. It's pretty fast to loot because it's all fairly linear, and there's lots of good loot here. So this is a great place, and there's really more than you'll almost ever be able to loot or want to loot because there's both sides of the canyon, there's 3 hangars, there's all of this stuff. So almost never have I looted the entire thing because this just has so much. But anyways, this is going to be my list for the best places to land, loot up. Make sure to subscribe so that you see my guides coming out here pretty soon on how to actually land at all of these places and more. And my next video I have planned is actually some off-meta places to land for a few different ways to play the game. But anyways, guys, until next time, I will see you online.